So welcome, my name's Emma Adams. I'm hosting along with my colleague Joy Furnival, who I'll get her to introduce herself in a second, these webinars. So this is the third out of 4 webinars that we've had arranged around quality management systems. So we're doing these webinars on behalf of the Q community, which is a network of around 5,000 people across UK and Ireland, who are committed to improving health and social care. Through the sharing of ideas, collaboration, networking, all sorts of different ways in that we're trying to connect each other and improve health and social care. And the webinars are part of that. You'll have booked through the Q website, so you'll see an ability to join the Q community if you're in UK and Ireland. So please encourage you to do so. But we'll also share a link to that at the end of the webinar. So without further ado, let's get going. So my name's Emma Adams. I'm an improvement consultant and I work across the NHS, across the country really, helping people build improvement capability and look at different ways of improving their services. Joy, would you like to say hello and tell everyone who you are?
Yeah, hello everyone, I'm Joy Furnival. I'm the Chief of Regulatory Compliance and Improvement at the North West Ambulance Service, and I've been helping design and run these sessions with Emma. Mostly helping. Emma's done most of the running, it's fair to say. Nice to see you all here, and a special welcome. We have invited the NWAS QI network as an option to join this seminar today, so I can see lots of people in the chat joining, so welcome especially to the NWAS QI network.
Oh, fantastic. That's really nice. So I'm going to introduce our guests. I'll give you a little brief rundown of who they are, but if they could then say hello, that would be great. So our first guest is Dr. Nicola Bateman, who's Associate Professor in Operations Management at the School of Business at Leicester University. And Nicola's been researching visual management for about 15 years now. So she's produced some internationally recognised research in the field of visual management and helped a number of blue chip companies around this internationally. So Nicola, would you like to just say hello so we can see who you are?
Hello, I hope you can all hear me okay, and it'd be great to speak to you all a bit later on.
Fantastic, thank you, Nicola. So our second guest is Sarah Scales. Sarah's Associate Director of Transformation at Royal Surrey NHS Foundation Trust. She's a Generation Q Fellow with the Health Foundation and has led the Trust's transformation programme with support from NHS Improvement's Vital Signs programme for a number of years now. So would you like to say hello, Sarah?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm looking forward to telling our story later in the session.
Fantastic. And then our third guest is Richard Best. So Richard's Director of Improvement at University Hospitals Plymouth, at the bottom of the country. Richard's led that transformation programme for quite some time in Plymouth, and particularly again with the support of the Vital Signs programme. So would you like to say hello, Richard?
Yeah, hello, and I'm looking forward to this afternoon's sessions and learning as well as everybody else. Thank you.
Great. So today we'd like you to be on mute if you can while we present the core material. Chat's open throughout, so pose any questions that you've got. We like plenty of questions. At the end of the presentations we'll have a short plenary, which means you can pose some of the burning things that might have popped in your mind, but also don't worry, we are open to picking things up at the end of the presentations and the end of the webinar as well. If your tech fails, don't worry, because we're recording this, so you can look at it later, and we're looking to produce some shorter 15-minute versions as well after all this. We like to use Twitter quite a bit, so please tweet if you can using the hashtag QComQMS, so Q Community QMS at the Q Community. If you can do that, that would be great. And really don't worry if the dog, the child, the window cleaner, whatever interrupts you. It's fine, we're all used to it now, aren't we? We don't care. Hopefully I won't get interrupted by the dustbin men or something like that. That's what usually happens. But anyway, let's crack on. So the way we're running this webinar is I'll do a little brief outline of what we've done so far and what we've got left to come. Richard's going to take us through the People First programme at Plymouth. Nicola is then going to talk to us about visual management research findings. We'll have a short breakout so you can meet other people who are on the call, which is always a nice thing to do, make some connections, and we'd love your for you to share amongst yourselves any thoughts that you might have, and think about that plenary and whether there's a question that's emerging for you. Then Sarah's going to take us through the Royal Surrey daily continuous improvement approach, which is part of their larger quality management approach across the trust. Then Joy will chair a panel, and then we'll review and close. And right at the very end, we'd like to just run a quick poll. In the spirit of improvement, we'd like to know what you think. So please give us that poll right at the end if you can hold on to it. So why are we doing this webinar series? Well, I think both Joy and I are improvers of a long time now, and one of the things that's really sort of struck us is how you can put a huge amount of effort into quality improvement only for it to slide back to usual or not be embedded. So we've been grappling with the question of why isn't improvement sustained, and that's led us into really thinking about improvement as an integrated part of other ways of managing quality through the Duran trilogy. So if you don't know about Joseph Duran, we've got a reading list associated with this. Please have a look. But essentially, he said that high performing organizations think of quality as a system across the whole organization, so that everyone is turned towards quality as their top priority. And that's through the planning of quality, through daily control, and through stepping outside and making step change improvements to quality within that system. So what we've been doing over these webinar series is looking at this in much more detail. So our first webinar right at the beginning of the year was around really just setting that organizational temperature. What is it we do around quality? How do we do it? How can we start to think about making our organization much more systematic in the way it approaches quality? Then we moved on to thinking about how do you take that quality planning aspect, how do you take what it is you want to achieve in your organization and make sure that's aligned all the way through. And then today, we're really talking about that quality control aspect. So how do we think about the work that's actually done, not the work that we think is happening, but the work that's actually done, and make quality management a daily reality. And we're going to hear from people who are doing this all the time at the moment, so it's really great to hear their experience. And then the final webinar we've got planned for the 4th of July will really be around that leadership that's needed and the cultural change to be able to bring people towards working together for delivering the right kind of quality for people. So that's our series. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand my slide control over to Richard, who is hopefully standing by right now. See if I can find him.
Is that possible still?
Yeah, hang on a second, Richard. See if I can do it. I've got to find you. See, I did have you on my list, but now seems to be, hang on. Apologies, everybody. We've practiced
If
this.
not, you can control the slide, it's fine.
Yeah, I'm going to control the slide actually, Richard, because I think it's not going to work otherwise. So if you're all right with that, so over to you.
I'm fine with that, thank you. So just to keep people relaxed, there is only 14 slides, and one of those is a video clip. So we are going to attempt to do a virtual go see. It's pre-recorded, so it's snippets, but we'll hope you not just talk about the practice, but you can actually see some of it happen. So firstly, I just want to say welcome. I hope you enjoy this little section. I feel a bit in awe, really, because there's coaches and mentors of me in the audience. So I just want to say thank you very much to Joy and Vital Signs team, and I see Changeway in the audience as well, who've all helped and contributed to our journey. So thank you very much, and I hope I live to your coaching and teaching aspirations. We are on quite a great journey here, I hope, and I hope that you learn how we're bringing it alive this afternoon. And we'll go to the next slide, if that's possible. Thank you. So I try to put a few pictures from some of the places I've worked in my career on here, and it wasn't really to talk about where I've worked, but actually they're all different, but they're all the same. And there's 5 things I've picked up which still ring true now, and actually in our rollout of quality management system are really important principles. And the 5 things I've picked up in that lovely career, which has been a bit haphazard, but it's been great, is the first is the roles and the habits around frontline leadership are pivotal to change anything. So if they don't change, it doesn't happen. And so making change real at the front line has got to be an aim for everybody. Creating curiosity around value. So what is important, and encouraging that in the teams seems to make a huge difference. And 3 really important principles of enabling: clarity of purpose, building hope through improvement, and building respect. And I guess I'd summarize that in some ways that all this lean and QI and QMS is not a toolkit journey. And I saw there is a question about tools. To me, it's 70% behavioral. And I do get worried when you see this fragmentation of behavioral science and improvement science. For me, it all should be bunged in together to how you help people become better at what they do in a rounded aspect. So I hope those five kind of principles have worked all the way through, actually, to help make change happen. So we'll just do the next slide. This is a bit of a potted history of our improvement journey. And again, a big thank you to the Vital Signs Programme for really helping us make a solid move forward. It's not textbook and it's not pretty, by the way. So it is jolly hard work. And I'm sure everybody's facing that, but we've stuck to it, and I'll talk about a bit of that later. It's also had huge impacts, and there's some really clear evidence on both some productivity areas, impact areas, patient pathways, but mostly culturally about how it feels to work in some of these areas where teams are driving stuff and quality management is to the fore. We've been really helped on our journey, so I just want to say an applause to the people in the NHS and some from outside, that we started our journey by learning from Royal Salford, Western Sussex, Barking, Leeds, East London, Virginia Mason, picking up actually what we could see was working and not working. And then Vital Signs came along just at the right time for us, which was fantastic. So we're on our journey. It's quite a long journey. One of my reflections, having spent half my life in industry, is the NHS does take longer time doing things than anybody else. And some of that is about the confidence and the freedom to act, I think, rather than the size of the challenge. The challenge for me is obviously massive because we're big interconnected systems, but there's still something about the confidence by which we do things, and having the confidence in the best known way. Sometimes we have too many systems and theories rather than follow what's simply the best. Personal view there might prompt some challenge in the chat. I didn't mention the chat, by the way. Could we go to the next slide? And I'll be brief on the next couple of slides. I really like people to be interactive on the chat. So if people want to make disagreeable statements with me, I will follow up on the chat and just give you a different view. Or if you've got a real insight that you think that would be helpful. So we didn't start this with a compact. So we missed that step, unfortunately. But we did start with a really engaging conversation of our top leaders, which was clinicians, nurses, and managers. And you can read the words on the slide yourselves. I no doubt you could pick this up and move it to another organization. And some really key things on there: too much committee, too many meetings, no daily standard work, not enough alignment. And I know it's quite a harsh phrase, by the way, keep on reweighing and weighing the pig about problems and just not getting on and fixing the stuff. How do we get out of that? And I think the next slide, please. We did that very simply on the same day, which was from our learning. So it wasn't just based on no knowledge. From our learning of the other trusts, and we'll share something in a minute, we made a very simple plan, and that was based on understanding and knowledge. And actually, we've stuck to it. So although it's an ideal, you'll see our management system model, but pretty much we've tried to stick to it all the way through. It is very simple. And you've heard the previous 2 presentations have been masterclasses in strategy deployment and how to bring this alive. And I'm going to try and get more into the roots of that in terms of what's the detail. So we'll do the next slide. One of the key learning points for me was the ability to take execs to places to see it happen. Made such a huge impact to have executives, and you can see the moment when the penny drops, when they go, "Oh, you mean that? Oh, that's straightforward. We can do that. I feel much more relaxed." Or, "Wow, wasn't that impactful?" And we were very lucky to witness the exec visibility wall at Tees Escambia Valley and see 16 items debated and discussed in 32 minutes with clarity, precision, and with the involvement of the whole team, and nobody on mobile phones and nobody in chit-chat conversations on the side, all led by the chief exec, was incredibly impressive. I'm not sure if all the same now, but actually it was really great to see a system and give the confidence to our execs to take a big step themselves. So that was really great. So I think Exemplar is really helpful. Could we do the next slide, please? Thank you. So we have our system. You'll probably look at Western Sussex and Theta Care and go, oh, that's a very clear system. It's almost the same. We've got a couple of differences. I would say the thing that I've learned on my journey is it's not all about the boxes, it's about the arrows. And our two next things to discover, improve, and work on are the catchball conversation with our divisions, which are care groups, and the scorecard to replace performance reviews. And that's the step we're at now in terms of experimenting and developing. But the key for us that drives everything is team huddle and frontline quality practice. So if we could just do the next slide. Our practice, pretty much a lot of our key practices are built on the slide. So an exec wall, a care group improvement huddle, team huddles, and we differentiate production control, which you'll see in a minute, by the way. You'll see an excerpt of one working, but we also have these things called big walls, which are themes that run across care groups. So it's a mini Obeya, but engaging project management and using all the metrics that we can and visuals to make that really engaging conversation. We've had one big wall running for 2.5 years on outpatients, still really successful, still attracts 40+ consultants to a half-an-hour meeting once a week, and always working on improvement. So really successful. Can we do the next slide? So you will see an example of production control, and bear in mind that's a bit of a technical slide. I apologize, the graphics are on the left. The reason we're pulling it out is this is our flavor, and it might be everybody else's flavor. We try and pull out the are we on it conversation every day. So are we working on delivery? Is someone looking after quality? Have we got enough staffing? Are there any safety issues to discuss? We pull those out separately from our improvement conversations. And we do it for two reasons. One is we want to do it really well because, sorry, I use the phrase, being on it and being able to do those things gives confidence to a lot of people and stops a lot of firefighting, but also enables the different tone in the improvement conversation if you're free of those conversations. So we pull those out, and you'll see an example in our video in a minute. So I hope that's helpful to people. So one last slide before we get to the videos. So pretty much in every area we work, we emphasize these 5 pillars. I'm not going to describe all of them, but I will describe one of them at the end because it's invented here, and I've probably talked to a few people about it as well. So I was very lucky to go to a European catalysis forum about 3 years ago, really impressed by some of the work done in Switzerland around monitoring how teams were feeling and getting on it. It was transformational for the hospital that was involved. And we came back and came out with our own routine of actually, how do we check in how well teams are feeling and managing variation in their values and how they approach stuff. So we've got a really great routine now, which is used among 1,300 staff. And it's basically every area we roll out in, team health gets rolled out as a routine, as part of the huddle at the same time. And the evidence now is basically 3 to 5% of all teams show a big improvement when we measure them. And we measure teams on team reflexivity. So the Michael West work, which is really simple, but it's actually easy to check. And I was really heartened to read Brené Brown's Dare to Lead and her statements on leaders must invest a reasonable amount of time to attend to fears or feelings or squander, and I won't do the whole rest of the quote, unreasonable amounts in trying to manage behaviors. And actually for us, it's a protective thing because it enables teams to be, enables them to be better than they were and work on behaviors in the team, but in a really open way, unjudged. So if we just go to the next slide, I think I have to do some magic now. So this might just get a bit complicated. What I've got lined up for you is an 8-minute video of 3 practices. Now, I hope this works because those 3 practices are a care group improvement huddle, which is almost at the pinnacle of our improvement, which happens every fortnight in our one of our divisions called CSS. It is edited, so bear in mind the whole combination of everything is only 8 minutes. So I'm just going to try and share my screen. I hope this works, and then we'll start the video, and I'll probably talk over it. And I'll make sure I click these 2 buttons. I wouldn't mind just an affirmatory from Emma whether I'm sharing the right one, because I can't see anybody now.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, I hope the sound come across, but please stop me if it doesn't. It's silent for a couple of seconds. So I guess what I'd what I aspire for the audience is this is quite rough, but it's real practice in 8 minutes of 3 practices, a care group improvement huddle. You've got the improvement conversation as part of a dispensary team huddle. And at the end, you've got medical production control. And if you're playing bingo in terms of words, I think what they call it, there's another word for it, but if you're looking for the jingo in the bingo, how many people can spot scripted conversations, set formats, data over time, listing involving staff, and checklist and rigor, and just see what you can spot in the conversations, because these are bedrocks for what we do. The sound does start in a second.
Okay, great. So our first 2 slides are really just scene setting slides. The first one is the standard update template. And note that we should try to keep our updates to 2 or 3 minutes maximum. And then there'll be an opportunity for people to ask questions. So that slide outlines the content, and this slide links to the Trust's strategic improvement priorities. So let's move on to
so our projects to consistently achieve less than or equal to 0.1 micrograms of residual protein on the surface of an instrument after it's been washed in a washing machine. This links the delivery of safe, high quality services strategic priority.
Are you hopeful that when we get the equipment sorted and we have an appropriate sample size, that we'll see that graph come back down?
Yes, yes.
And I see Kerry's in the audience, so over to you, Kerry.
So the summary is we want to install NetCall supported single point of access call tree within imaging to improve communications across the department and resilience of the system, with scope to increase patient and referrer experience and reduce our DNA rate.
The second presentation is implement GFR POC device in outpatient CT.
This is about implementing a point of care device in outpatient CT, and that's to negate the need for long patient waits for a GFR test and reduce patient waits for diagnostic imaging and report.
Implementation of point of care testing for COVID in ED, and this is linked to the strategic priority for providing services in a sustainable way.
And the second project from pathology is the development of an integrated anemia pathway for primary care.
The aim of which is to reduce inappropriate requests to improve investigation of anemia, and through that reducing the time to complete investigation and correct diagnosis for these patients.
And pharmacy's project is investing in our workforce. And I can see Steve on the call. Are you picking this up?
This is one of our 10 strategic aims, is about investing in workforce.
So this is a new sustainability project. As you are aware, we started the 7-day services within therapies recently.
Don't panic, this isn't the end. You've got another couple of minutes.
Yeah, good. We'll make a start. So reminder of the team aim, ensure patients are getting their medicines as quickly and safely as possible. Quick rundown of roles so you look at yesterday's data. So really good day. So we've been a little bit off earlier in the week, but yesterday we managed to smash it. We did 109 TTAs in total yesterday, which is our busiest day for about 3 weeks. Our turnaround times from screen to dispense, so for all of our TTAs, we were down to 172 minutes. So that's significantly better than it's been for the last 4 or 5 days a day.
It seemed to flow really well. The flow from dispensing, labelling, we had people dispensing as well.
Yep.
There was a good focus on TTAs and EPMA, so nothing was kind of left behind. So yeah, it did feel like it flowed, and even through the check-in, some points we had 2 or 3 checkers. Yeah. Just keeping it flowing through, so it was never really building up.
So was that, I guess, so yesterday we talked about having additional checkers. Did we implement that yesterday, Carly?
Not yet. It wasn't really implemented.
But just talking about it kind of made people think about it a bit more.
It's at the forefront of their minds.
Yeah. Okay, good. So any thoughts as to anything that's blocking us? Anything I need to escalate? or any suggestions of things we could do better?
Just a thought regarding the minutes we talk about on the reports. Obviously that's from screened to dispense as an overall. So we don't technically kind of see the stages of like when it's screened and printed and put into the pigeonhole, and like now it's sat there physically waiting to be dispensed but not been picked up yet. So it's that idle time. Is there a way of us drilling like deeper into the report to like break it down to kind of get a more accurate picture of the stages?
Yeah, I thought we could probably introduce like an ATO-led jobs list just to support the technician's jobs list. So say a technician gets blister packs or EPMA is their predominantly job for the day. If they get overwhelmed, rather than taking another technician from another job role and causing like a escalating backlog of work, the ATOs could then support, and then it would give them a chance to learn those job roles as well. So then it gives a bigger picture and more of an experience for the ATO. So if we're short-staffed, we've got more cover.
Yeah, they can jump in and cover.
So this happens.
Good morning, everybody. I hope everyone's had a lovely morning so far. This is the Medicine Care Group Huddle that we've just started. So, Lewis, I think you're SLM of the day. Could you just give us some headlines from this morning, please?
Ambulances outside this morning, there were 10 as we came in this morning. It's now 13, so it has increased slightly. And ambulatory's jumped up a little bit. So we've got 104 overall in the department. Positively, our discharge number so far for the trust is looking quite strong. So medicine have reached their sort of predicted discharge target already, which is a good going.
Cool, thank you. And HEP's looking pretty good to start.
Yeah, HEP looks like a good start today. So we've got 4 home stays. One of those have already gone, and we expect at least another one to be an early discharge as well. We've got 1 query, and I've chosen TTAs on the query because the rest of the home stays are all they're like, if there's most of them has already been done, and there is one that was in progress as well. Medically fit for discharge has gone down to 2. Long length of stay, it's gone up a little bit to 8. We've got 4 outliers there, so that's gone down a little bit. Our medically fit for discharge, our longest is 68 days, and that patient is home today, which is good, and all of the patients are on treatment, and I've got no other escalations from the ward.
Cool. Who's doing rest today, please?
Morning, that's me today. So looking quite good for discharges. We got 5 home today, and 5 query home. So hopefully they'll change home today. There's just 1 TTA not started, but I've chased that one. 3 of those patients are suitable for discharge, landed in transport.
So I've just stopped it there because it goes on for about another minute, and what they do is link into the topics for their improvement huddle that follows later in the week. I hope we can get a feel for some real practice and how it's happening here. There's still more work to do with all those practices, so I hope you people get some of that, get some of that, and also ticked off some of that jingo bingo. Hopefully, some of them have managed to pop up there. Are you going back to sharing the slides again now, the proper slides, Emma?
Yes, I will do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you want me to put them on? Yeah, definitely. Okay, you see that all right? I'll do the next slide for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So there's only 3 slides left, so don't panic, everybody, about time. We're nearly there. We've had lots of impact, so I'm not going to go through the entire list. A couple of things for me really stand out, though. We held during COVID a CATA challenge week instead of an improvement event week, and it worked amazingly with all the imaging teams. And the net result across the 5 projects we worked, all of them increased flow by 10%. And was phenomenal. That's 10% above normal practice, but during COVID, really important to us. And I believe that hopefully at some time there is going to be a CATA topic in the Q community. So I look forward to Anne and others maybe contribute to that. But it was really helpful and supportive of us, and all the thinking behind that is just so incredible. So I'm a big fan. The next slide, please. I was going to invent a new, because we all love little acronyms, don't we? I was going to invent a new 3 M's for this slide, which was the middle must move. So we spend a lot of time on tools and frontline team training, but we're also now spending, probably a bit too late actually, but should have done earlier, time with the middle management teams. So people that run divisions, right down to the areas, how they can either kill practice or support it. and we know that. So the middle can actually decide not to engage or engage. And we're getting some really good response of this kind of 9 approaches that we're giving them in bite-sized training with intervals and reflection. And it's really helping them lead the practice rather than just be done to and watch what the teams are doing. So it's been really, so I just want to leave you with that. The middle must move is really important that we do make it move, and they have practice as well, standard work in their work that helps them support the quality management system. So my last slide, just a simple bit of learning. Sorry, it's a list. I couldn't find an inventive quality way, so we just move slides. And I guess this is just from our learning. Certainly we're still on the journey with execs. We have some fully on board. We've still not got all our exec practice on board, but they have also got in some ways the longest management experience and the biggest habits to unpack. So so quite a challenge for them, and probably we could have done more earlier, and there's a reflection that there's still more to do, but we're on the journey. One is we had a plan to develop our quality management system, and we pretty much stuck to it, and we are still sticking to it and trying to build it, even in spite of COVID. Just a reflection, I see some people put some supportive comments in there, which is absolutely behavior and culture, not just tools and projects. Just want to re-emphasize all the work that's being done, because I don't see enough of it in the NHS around strategy deployment. It's gold. I've already talked about middle management, but real fidelity, the detail matters in frontline standard work and coaching, the visual management, the kata, how huddles run. We are quite pedantic around the ingredients because we think it's so important to get the best out of teams. We don't do dosing, all right? So that might be controversial to IHI colleges and other places. We do focused area improvement, whole sections like the imaging area, CSS, pathology. We do chunks of work to get the benefit. And we do balance the lean and the team in our team health routine. So I hope you've enjoyed that. And that's how we're bringing alive the quality management system. I do apologize. I think I've run over 4 minutes. But that was me.
We'll forgive you, Richard. Thank you very much. That was really fascinating. So much there. I'm going to whiz us straight on to Nicola, because we might run out of time. So Nicola, I've given you slide control. So if you'd like to start your presentation, thank you very much for joining us.
Okay, so thank you very much for whipping on to me so quickly. Let's get cracking. So my research is sort of titled visual management research, and it goes beyond the realms of health. And so you'll see some of the material I'm going to cover will draw in from other sectors as well. And of course, that's really important because different sectors can all learn from each other. But health has been a really key area in the area of visual management. And you'll see a bit later on when I talk a bit about the research that's ongoing, how that fits together. But what I'm going to talk to you about now is really about the design and also practice of those visual elements that we saw were so important in Richard's presentation. So what I'm going to talk to you today about is the outcome of some of the research that's been ongoing over the last 15 years. And the most important one of them is really interesting, that it in Richard's presentation, some of the people in the video talked about flow, and Richard also mentioned flow. And what I assume they're talking about there is the flow of their processes. But what you need to do in the design of your boards and also your standard work, that your daily habits or standard work about using those boards, is make sure that the arrangement of the elements on your board matches the flow of the conversation that you want to have. And when I say that's the most important, we've tested these ideas using controlled trials, and that's the one that comes out as most important. And I'll show you a little demonstration of what I mean by that. The next thing that comes out is RAG, i.e. red, amber, green, can be unhelpful. Now, this doesn't come out quite so strongly. And what I mean by that is that sometimes using a red, amber, green can kind of mask the data that you actually want to see behind it. It's useful for what we call directed focus, i.e. it encourages you to focus on the areas that might be identified as red. But it means that as soon as you see these red or maybe amber things, is that you say, I want to see the detail. And if you aren't able to present that detail at the same time, then it's a little bit pointless. And it kind of masks the issues that you might want to be discussing. So what I'm saying is with those RAG charts is think about making sure that you can access the data that has flagged that red or amber or whatever. Okay, the next thing that came out was we tested whether tables or graphs are best, and actually didn't seem to make a difference. It was much more what your team was used to. And we found that accountants like tables and engineers like graphs. So the thing to do is ask your team. Go with what they think works for them. And this was from, you can see there's a reference there, and that's in the pack that you'll be able to pick up if you want to read a little bit more about it. Some previous work was actually designing some visual management principles that we then went on to test. So these next couple of slides tell you a little bit more about these principles. So first of all is a layout that reflects the flow, and I'll give you an example of that in a minute. The second kind of macro design thing about how you might design your board is you have a cognitive workspace of 7. And I expect lots of you will already know that and will know the reference and everything. But essentially what it means is if you try and cram too much into someone, let's say that you've got 14 performance measures that all act at the same level, they will only remember about 7. You might think, well, it's better than nothing. It is, but the problem is if you're trying to do coherent team decision making, different people will pick a different 7, and that's it, your strategic direction has gone. So what you need to do is to select up to 7 items that are important to you. You can then change them, maybe in 6 months or a year's time, but you need to remain focused around those 7 items. Okay, so this is the example of that flow that I wanted to tell you about. So this is an example of a board. I haven't put the actual graphs on. I put on kind of the titles that would be in the graphs. This team started the weekly OTIF, and then they work down to their weekly 5S. OTIF stands for on time in full. Then they go to their weekly cause analysis, quality and efficiency. Okay. They would then go into detail. They would then identify areas for improvement. So specific actions that they want to take based on that. What they might do as they go along is dig down into those causes. And this is when this structure of 7 becomes important, because we've only got, in this case, they've actually got 8. They chose 2, and that was their choice as a group, knowing that 7 was the best. But what it allows them to do is to dig down in that, because of course we all know more than 7 things at once, but by digging down, that allows us to structure it in a way that we can understand. And if you have a look at the kind of psychology behind it, that's what the psychologist suggests is the best way to do this kind of flow. So when you're thinking about your boards, or if you want to audit your boards, make sure that the flow fits what you're saying or your kind of daily briefing habit. I've got a lovely example of how when flow isn't helpful, and some of you might, that's where the strategy drives in as well. This next slide shows a lovely example of flow that confuses, and some of you who might recognize it, I don't know if anyone recognizes it. It's from a train toilet, and that's why it's a little bit blurred, because it was vibrating as we were going along. Basically, the first thing you need to do is on the right hand side, the door with the D, but the instruction for that is at the top left. And naturally, reading English, you read from left to right. So people tended to push the left hand button, not the right hand button. You may also have seen many, many iterations of this because they keep thinking this doesn't work, and that's because they haven't got their flow correct. Okay, so the last few sort of design principles are more detailed. And this is about using colour sparingly. So just use it to highlight key features. Avoid using excessive borders. and that looks at the minimum ink to data ratio, and that comes on to the last concept that I'm going to talk about, which is data density and simplicity. And then the final detailed point is about using the right graphical tool to convey data. And this is a little bit more complicated, and it helps if you can kind of understand what kind of data you've got. But essentially, it's about saying, don't show things like discrete data as continuous data, because it will give you false readings. Okay, my last point about design is about data density and simplicity. Now, this is a challenging balance for all people who are producing these kind of visual management tools, because you want to get as much useful information in there as possible, but you don't want to overwhelm people. And that's what you need to balance between. In fact, people are very good at taking in quite detailed amounts of data, but it has to be presented in a way that's accessible and is clearly structured. The reference here is for Tuft, and there's a reference for that at the end. But the example that Tuft gives is of British OS maps. British OS maps are really detailed, but you can draw out the information that you might need, which might be what's the best route from the pub to my hotel, or it might be, can I walk down this footpath? And you can draw that out very quickly, but there's very dense data nonetheless. So when you're thinking about there's a lot of information I've told you there. When you're thinking about, am I doing good design or not? This summary by McCandless is really useful. And there's a link there and to have a look at that. And basically what you need to do is have a look at your what you've got and say, have I got the right data? Is it doing it in a good story? Is the structure right? Does it help me achieve my goal? And is the visual metaphor useful? Out of those four, visual metaphor is probably the least important for us. Okay, and my final point is about the move from analog boards to digital boards. The information that I've showed you so far has all been on analog. So we've been doing some pilot trials, testing out some of the trials that we had in analog on digital. I've also had some field observations of companies using digital formats, and we're going to be doing an evaluation study. And I think some of the people who are helping us do that are actually in the audience today. So thank you very much, and we'll hope to be talking to you in the next month. I also have a PhD student who's working on this project, looking at the barriers and enablers for electronic and analog visual management. And I expect you'll be seeing more of Helen's work in the future. Do look out for her. And that finishes what I was going to say. Those are all the sources if you want them. I'm going to go back to the really useful, what makes a good visualization from McCandless. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Nicola. That's fascinating. And I know there's lots of for people to take in. So we will have a reading pack that will be on the website. So you can have a look at all the things that Nicola's referred to, as well as Nicola's contact details if you're really interested in this. There's lots there. And Nicola and I connected because on Twitter we collect visual management examples, don't we, Nicola? So wherever we see somebody's improvement board, we take a picture of it and share it. So it's really interesting. There's lots of variation of practice, and I think if you're starting to use visual management, really accessing some of that research might be really helpful for you. Just to sort of move us on a little bit, we're going to do a quick breakout so you can get to know some people who are on the call. And we'd just like you to say hello and share what you're starting to think about. And if you've got a question for the panel, and once we've heard from Sarah, then pop it in the chat. Joy and I will pick it up, but also be prepared to stick your hand up and ask it properly, because that's always nice. Shah is going to take us into breakouts. Okay, thank you, Shah. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you found that useful. We had a lovely, interesting little chat as well. Just to reiterate that the recording will be available as would the slides and as was the reader material. So if you're starting to think, oh gosh, I can't catch up with this as quick as possible, don't worry. There will be ways of doing that. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to hand us over to Sarah. Who's going to do our next presentation. Sarah, are you standing by and ready to go? Yeah, okay, so what I will do is I'll put us on share and go on to the next slide, and I'll hand over to control to you, Sarah. Right, so you now have control. Okay.
Lovely, thank you, Emma. Thank you very much for asking me to come today. It's a very hard act to follow the two presentations earlier. I thought they were fascinating. What I just wanted to do, I'm going to check the slides work. So I work at Royal Surrey, which is in the Surrey Heartlands ICS, and we're an acute community and regional cancer centre. And we've had quite a long history of trying to perfect our improvement approach. We started back in 2008, and it was mostly focused, as I think a lot of people are, when they start, on QI projects, improvement projects, getting people trained how to do a piece of improvement work, and the focus was very much on improvements and how to do that. We realised after a few years that it was great doing all this improvement work, but it wasn't actually changing the fabric of how the hospital worked. And so in 2012, we started our journey of developing our kind of approach to developing daily routines to support improvement. Kind of a quality control approach, but we didn't know it was called that at the time. And this, what I'm going to talk you through in the next 10-15 minutes, is kind of some of the elements of how that works for us. So this is kind of what I would describe as our management system, and I'm not going to talk it through in detail, although I will just highlight the fact that what happens in our strategy deployment is we have our true north objectives, which are cascaded down into breakthrough objectives, which come and we get impact from our place, ICS, and some of the national priorities to make sure we've got the key things that are going to cover all the different many asks on us as an organisation. And then we set our golden thread priorities and corporate objectives, which as an organisation, they become the thing that people know are the things they need to focus on. So that's our quality planning. And then we have a different kind of spectrum of improvements all the way across on the right. We have improvement events and programme management, which are your large scale pathway type changes. You've got in the middle the things that we were teaching people since 2008, which are our kind of QI approaches, that people are making tests of change and changing small things in their areas. And then we have kind of our daily routines. And the daily routines is what we call achieving excellence, because that was the name that we came up with in 2012. And I think it sticks and it works for us. And all of that is supplemented behind the scenes by development of our leadership teams in quality improvement coaching and some of the ethos of actually how do we work in a way that supports people to maintain and then improve quality. And that it kind of sums up achieving excellence in this slide. So you can see in yellow there's quality improvement, and that is still a core part of it, with the idea being is that it should be the people who do the work improving it. We want to get to the root cause of problems, not just put lots of sticking plasters on, and learning through experimentation, not waiting for the perfect fix. The two elements that I'm going to focus most on today are how we manage performance visually and the setting, maintaining improvements of standards. And for us, those two things are core to our kind of quality control, and they help us to, I guess, maintain quality and also spot when things aren't working that might need addressing through one of the improvement approaches that we've got, whether it's small scale, medium or large. And then on the right hand side, none of this would work without us having these clear principles, and these we align with our learning and development team and with our kind of induction, and everything that we do is to try and perpetuate these principles which support both the quality control and the quality improvement work, because without these none of the rest of it works. So I'm going to start from the top. So every week we have an executive and senior leadership team huddle, and it's now virtual, which is actually working really, really well, but we still use visual management. And on that, we have our 5 True North objectives, each of which has one breakthrough objective, which every 3 to 6 months gets reviewed, not always changed. And our execs, who've all been trained in our improvement approach, are using A3 to start addressing the breakthrough objective and every week they update, well, every fortnight they update on what they're doing and the kind of progress they've made, review the measures, has the changes had the impact that we thought it would, etc. And then on the alternate weeks, the divisional teams feedback on what they're doing in their divisions to help support the breakthrough objectives. And in this, we also have a kind of a safety huddle, which highlights some of the, I guess, core safety issues that have come up. So that it's basically, this is a weekly routine that all of our senior leadership team are part of. And I think people would be lost without it now because it is so fundamental to just how we do things. And it sets the, I guess, the precedent for how things need to be done. So the visualization of data, visualization of action, the making sure that it's built in as part of a discipline and a routine. All of those things are things that we want to try and encourage everybody to have when they're working in their areas. So what I wanted to focus on mostly is, I guess, our kind of clinical areas. And we do have this in some of our back office areas, but it's mostly our kind of frontline clinical areas and our kind of business units. So this is an example of what is called a staff performance board. And the idea of this is it's for that team or that ward area, that outpatient area, to understand what's going on in their area from a performance perspective. So we have separate boards on the patient flow board, and staffing is kind of coordinated separately as part of a different chain of standard work. And these are, it's either daily or weekly, depending on what the ward sister wants to run it. And the idea being is that they have quite a lot of choice and say over how they do it, because the important thing for us is that they own it and that it's not a centrally dictated schedule that doesn't work for them and they're doing it and going through the motions. And the idea being is that they capture measures, which I'll talk about in a second. And as part of the conversation, they talk about what's happened, what's it telling us, what they're learning, and is there a need for any improvement based on what they're seeing. And you can see on here, we track issues and any improvement, kind of small improvement ideas using our 4 C's. And I think I've got these the wrong way around. It should be concern, containment, cause, countermeasure. With the idea being is that anybody can raise a concern. Then the containment is put in place as part of the conversation in the huddle, so that we can make sure it doesn't get any worse, whilst the cause is investigated by an allocated person, and then the countermeasure is logged and updated. And having the visual management and all those problems being visible, it's taken a while, but it really helps people to feel they're able to talk about it, because often what we were finding before we implemented this is that there'd be more moaning and things that'd be like, oh, it never gets changed. And now they've got an outlet for kind of those things to go, and actually it's part of a discussion. It's not just they're having a corridor conversation with one of their colleagues about it and feel nothing gets done. So this board is kind of fundamental to how our wards and outpatient areas work. And I just wanted to pick out, I guess, 3 of the elements, because for us, capturing the detail of the data that tells us how we're doing is one of our, I guess, most important things. And as you can see on here, there's 3 different measures. One's falls, pressure ulcers, and one is the measuring how well, or I guess key measures around the safer huddle that happens, the board round. And the idea of these is that the teams choose which are the key measures linked to zero harm that they want to focus on. And it's not just collecting data in terms of numbers. You can see on here, they try and on a daily basis start to capture the reasons why. So what are the associated factors on this one on the left, and also what time of the day did it happen. And the reason for that is that what we're trying to do is build up a picture of not only what's going on, but why it's happening live, rather than waiting for at the end of the month when you capture the data and think, oh, I wonder why we had those 3 falls on a certain day of the, or within the month. And different areas have different key measures. We try and stick to 3, because otherwise you can end up with 50 and they wouldn't necessarily have a focus like these 3 do. So to support all of this, we have something in place which is called, we call it leader standard work. And the idea of it is that at all levels of leadership, so we have nurse in charge level, ward system matron, clinical leadership team, so the SBU team, which is the SBU manager, the matron and the clinical director, and then up to divisional and executive leadership teams, all have a place in our clinical areas at the moment, which we're trying to extend to our back office areas as well, to go and check certain things. So in some respects, the daily ones that the nurse in charge and the sister do, and the weekly ones that the matrons do, are a bit more like a checklist. So it's making sure that certain standards are being maintained. So that might be around their 5S, it might be the boards, it might be something like a fridge check. So each area has developed a standard, a checklist that they look at regularly. Most of it's shared across the organisation, and there's regular sessions to review and learn from each other as well. And then at kind of senior divisional and executive and non-executive level, we're buddied up with those clinical areas for a period of 3 to 6 months, with the idea being is that we support them and coach them in how they're managing what they're doing, both from a quality control perspective, but also from a quality improvement perspective, and encouraging them to think about what they can do to further improve how they do things. And actually, some of our non-execs have said it's one of their favourite days of the month when they get to come in and have that conversation. They build a relationship with the person in charge, and they can work with them to tackle some issues over the course of 6 months that they're working with them. But all of this, it builds it into the fabric of the organisation, so that it's not something you couldn't stop this now, because it's so fundamentally built into what we do. But without it, I think we wouldn't know how we were doing, but also I don't think we'd have a support net in place to help maintain some of the excellent standards that the teams do. And I'm sure most areas will have a ward accreditation system at the moment, and we tie it in with that as well. So if there's particular key actions linked to the regular monitoring of the accreditation, then it gets picked up in the leader standard work, and we can talk about what they're doing about it and offer suggestions and link people up together if we know somewhere else in the hospital that is doing it really, really well. I just wanted to also highlight the fact that most of the work that we do has been physically in a department, but we have been experimenting with a Miro board, certainly for those areas that are more able to access computers, and that's the big challenge. And this is an example of our finance team's visual management board, or a subset of our finance team's visual management board. I think they use this weekly, and they've got, I didn't put it on this slide, but they also use the Miro board to capture their improvement work as well. So they've got on the right hand side of this on their board their A3 that they're working on at the moment. And so they can have their quality control stuff and also the quality improvement stuff in the one place, which is really useful and something that's not always possible with physical boards because of the space constraints. And then lastly, I was trying to, as I put this together, trying to think about what I would want to tell myself if it was 10 years ago. And I guess some of the things that have helped us is, and what we learned as we went through, is that team ownership of improvement is absolutely crucial to making it work. Someone coming in from the outside and telling them what to do is not actually going to change the fabric of how they run their area. And so they have to own it, and it might not look the same as the ward next door or as pretty as some of the places that we've been to visit, but it works, and it works for them, which is the most important thing. It's also helped sticking with it. So we've had a leadership team who've consistently supported it over the course of the last 10 years. And that, I think, has been absolutely fundamental to it becoming such a fabric of the organisation. We do steal with pride a lot, so all these good ideas that people are coming up with in these type of sessions, it's like, oh yeah, excellent, write that down, how can we make that work here? And I think, as Richard alluded to in his talk, there's definitely there's such a benefit in going and seeing and understanding what works, what is the best practice way. You might not use it exactly, but it definitely helps you to learn. And we have a central support, so we actually have an Achieving Excellence matron who maintains all of these. So relying on our clinical teams who are already stretched is really difficult, but the matron acts as a coach as well as a person who maintains all the standards, helps share learning, documentation, etc. And there's lots of learning, not all of which I've been able to fit onto here, but one of the key ones is that effective quality control does not always equal effective quality improvement. So some of the areas that we have great quality control and they measure things and they track things and they kind of dip around the same standard, they stay there. And so there's always that need for the kind of, I guess, the quality improvement bit to be discrete and to be kind of addition to the quality control, not just always part of it. We have struggled with the doctor side of things in terms of the quality control and the management system, because they're not as static as most of the nursing and AHP leadership teams. But we do have quite a lot of heavy involvement in QI, so it's one that we're still working on. Not to be too prescriptive of the format, so as I said, trust the team to develop what works best for them. You can help them with the format and what works well elsewhere, but at the end of the day, if it works for them, then it works. And the last one is we're not finished on our journey. We're never going to get there. We're always looking at things that we can improve, and there's always the need to monitor as well as I guess focus on improvement. So it takes effort just to stay static, and I think that's something that isn't always appreciated when you start implementing this type of journey. And I think that is it from me. And back to you, Emma.
Thank you ever so much, Sarah. There's, again, loads in there. And now's the opportunity, really. I'm going to hand over to Joy so that we can do a little bit of a speed panel. So if anybody wants to put their hand up and ask a question, then Joy can lead that. So Shah, would you mind just highlighting some of our guests as well? And I'll hand you over to Joy.
Well, hello everybody. Wasn't that great? I'm just sitting here going, oh my God, there's so many things that we need to do. Let's get on with them. So thank you everybody so far on the panel. If people have questions, please put them in the chat and we will try to get to as many as we can in this time that we've got. And I did put a little call out on Twitter earlier, so I had some pre-prepared questions that I'm going to start with while you're all having a think. And what I was thinking about while I was listening to all of that is some of the themes that were coming through. So there was something about standard work at all levels. There was something about detail matters at the front line. There was definitely something about how you bring tools and people together, so visual management and leadership standard work. And I really like the way Sarah ended that, which is it takes effort to stay static. You know, that's kind of the purpose of quality control. We can't just implement an improvement and then just imagine that it's going to stick. So I really like that phrase there. It takes effort to stay static. So I'm going to start with the first question that was in the chat a bit earlier. And Richard, this is for you in the first instance. Have you been able to experiment with leadership routines with external partners such as commissioners, for example?
So we were very fortunate. I'd say the short answer is no. Right, but I think we're influencing them now. And bear in mind, we started our journey jointly with a community provider, so we had kind of already a community sense that we were doing this together. I think we're already impacting, and when they see our one-page reports that go to care group improvement huddles, the exec wall, that's starting to become a ICS and a community thing, which is how do we cut that reporting out and use it? We've still got to influence lots, so we're only touching that.
Oh, lovely, thank you. Not quite a permanent fix for everybody yet. I'm still learning. Is that what you said, Richard? Brilliant. Yep. Right, so Nicola, I'm going to come to you. So the next question we did get on Twitter last night, so a bit of time to think about it. But any preferences for tools or frameworks for quality control? Perhaps different ones at different levels of an organisation, for example.
Well, I'm actually going to refer to, so I'm fairly happy with most of the frameworks that are out there, actually. And the important thing is to have a framework. You know, it's this application of pragmatic stuff. So quite often you have to kind of go with what's culturally acceptable in your organisation. So if a certain person's funding it, go with what they've got, because they've got the purse strings. Okay. But I was also picking up on what Sarah said, which is that team ownership is critical. So if your team want this particular framework, go with that. And you know, you if you've got training or outside people coming in, take what they've got, but don't feel you have to keep it. So I really like the fact that I'm just going to go back a little bit. Sarah said something about reviewing the areas of focus. Is that right, Sarah? Yeah, I think she's nodding now. So the thing is once you've got a framework, review it after 6 months. What's working for us? What's not working for us? I mean, I would probably start with something I was familiar with, you know, something like quality, cost delivery, that kind of thing. But I think the important thing is to fit in with the cultural norms of your organisation.
Lovely, great advice there. Lovely, Nicola, thank you very much. Right, Sarah, I'm going to come to you because you talked about medical engagement a little bit there on the reflections on your sheet. And Julie in the chat has asked, how have you gone about trying to tackle some of that? How have you approached it, Rosemary? Have you approached engaging consultants and medical staff in continuous improvement and some of the quality control work you talked about?
So I think there are two different questions, and I think we've had success in engaging the medical workforce in quality improvement. So we have improvement huddles, which I didn't focus on today because it's more, I was trying to do the quality control bit, quality assurance bit potentially. But certainly from a junior perspective, we embed it into the leadership program when they come in. So every junior has to do a piece of quality improvement. And so we kind of jump on them as they join and work with the kind of leadership, medical leadership team to train and develop them and get them involved. And actually all of our discrete improvement projects generally have a doctor involved, and quite a significant number of them at doctor-led as well. So we've taken quite a few of our doctors through our QI training, and we've got a deputy medical director focused on QI as well. So I think it's taken a long time, but often it's by building up one, others can see the benefit of being a part of it. And we've now actually allocated, we've got, I think, an acute medical, a theatres, a frailty and an outpatients clinical lead, all of which are doctors that have allocated time for QI as part of their job plan. So they not only get to do it, but they help infiltrate their colleagues and get them to be advocates for it, I guess, as well.
Lovely, thank you, Sarah. Richard, do you have something to add there?
No, apologise, I thought I was clapping.
All right, well, yeah, we'll all put our hands up with Richard. Excellent. Right, I'm going to take one last question from the chat, and then I think I'm going to hand back to Emma to close. So to everybody first, so if Richard, if you want to go first in responding. So Denise on the chat. Hi Denise, long time no see. Denise says, given the cultural behaviour piece and the time required to really build this culture of improvement and quality, are there any critical success factors we should focus on first if you've been, you know, the early part of the journey and beginning to implement?
I would start first with clear plan for the top end on strategy deployment and a clear plan of how you execute at a team level. I'd work it from either end straight away with some clear standard work and some principles around purpose, hope and respect.
Nice answer. Right, Nicola, would you like to add here as well?
Yeah, there was two, obviously I'm coming from an academic perspective, so there's two ideas you might want to think about. One is organisational readiness. So think about what you need in terms of organisational readiness. So sometimes organisations aren't ready for what you want to do now, in which case you have to lay that groundwork, and that can be the kind of the respect agenda that kind of Richard was talking about, or it could be technical expertise or even a budget. That's one thing. The other thing you might want to have a think about, and that's a concept that I put together about 7 or 8 years ago, called pillar or platform. Now, what we mean by that is a pillar is going in deep in a small area and applying things in a lot of depth. Or a platform is saying that everybody's going to have a go at this, and they both have advantages and disadvantages. But the thing to do is think through is to what is appropriate to your organisation. So a platform might be everybody's going to do 5S or visual management or something like that.
Yeah, so that kind of deep or narrow debate, deep and narrow, broad and shallow. Excellent, right, thank you very much. Right, Sarah, last word with you, go for it.
I would take a look at where you are and build from that. So the whole idea of this is not adding to what you're already doing, it's changing what you're doing. And so if you look to add loads of new things in, you risk of duplicating or confusing things. So my advice would be look at what you've got already and what you then adapt from that and build from that is where I would start.
Brilliant. So know where you're starting from. So thank you very much. Thank you everybody on the panel. Appreciate that. Thank you for answering questions on the spot as well. Appreciate that too. If people do have any more questions, please keep putting them in the chat because we'll work out a way of getting responses to you. So we'd more than love to hear all your questions. So please keep going. Thank you very much. Back to you, Emma.
Thanks. That was fascinating. Just quickly before we go, so before everyone disappears off. So love your feedback if we can have one thing you might be taking away and one thing you think you could build on. So please put that in the chat if you can. And just to remind you, we've got the last session of this series of 4. We're hoping we can do more, but the last session is on July the 4th. We've got Ruth Glasgow from Scotland, we've got John Bolton from Wales, and we've got David Fillingham, ex-Aqua, who are joining us to talk about leadership for quality and how you set that sort of top level culture. And also a quick plug, so if you want to join Q, this is where you'll find the information. So just to say thank you very, very much for joining us. We're going to run a poll any second now, but I hope you can join us for the next one, but also keep your eyes peeled because there will be more to come. So thank you very